I don't mind.
Fireside Cinema, but sometimes Brain presents.
Hello and welcome to our latest edition of the Fireside Cinema Family. I am Brian Hussar.
I'm Marianne Kaiser.
Kyle.
His wife. I'm kidding.
Absent today is Dan Kingsley and Aaron and Sam, but we're going to have a fun time anyways. All right, today on our episode we will be talking about The Last Tango in Paris and controversial erotic movies.
Right.
Now I'd like to introduce our Disney princess, your kitty,
Hardly.
with our Disney report.
I was going to do a pass the butter joke, but since we're talking about Disney news, we're going to keep that out. You want to be a star, kid? What's there to say?
How about that MCU?
How about that MCU?
How about that MCU? You're right. Poor Doctor Strange. Everything going on with these characters, he's just mad. That's why we're getting the multiverse of madness. How many things do we need to prove that multiverse, huh? Do you have any thoughts on it?
Doctor Strange is mad.
Doctor Strange is mad. He's just mad. Let's start with animated films. Pixar can really do no wrong except for A Bug's Life. I thoroughly enjoyed Luca. How about you guys?
I liked it. I thought it was really cool.
Luca was great.
There were many theories that were disproved by the director that the two main characters are in fact not based on LGBTQ plus characters. But since we support the entire alphabet mafia here, here's hoping that Disney goes beyond just one Spark short named Out, by the way. Please check it out on Disney Plus if you haven't already. It's very cute, but here's hoping that they expand on that. So, besides Pixar, obviously we have the extremely large Phase 4 expansion of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Phase 4, I mean, we know Fantastic Four are coming. I don't know if you saw that trailer, but it was definitely, that number 4 at the end was like a huge hint, like, yes. Yeah, so that's happening. Let's see. Have you guys watched Loki? Did you finish Loki?
Yes.
Okay.
I loved it.
Okay.
She didn't watch Loki.
Because
I haven't watched any of the shows.
without any spoilers, you know it's gonna all lead back to Doctor Strange. That poor dude, he is just mad. Because everybody is fucking up. Can we cuss?
Yeah.
Everybody's fucking up.
By the way, this episode's rated NC-17.
Yes. I mean, butter.
Yeah.
And I guess that's it for now. Well, no. Black Widow.
I liked
There
it.
was a huge turnout in the theaters for Black Widow because it was a Marvel film. People want to go back into the theaters. They want to see a Marvel film back in the theaters.
Back to cape shit. Superhero cape shit.
You're a total poser.
This is not a cool way to die.
It's not a cool way to die. I thoroughly enjoyed Black Widow. I saw it in the theaters. Brian, you saw it in the theaters. Marianne, see? We are huge supporters of the theaters. I do not believe the rumors that the theaters were dying, I don't think are true. I 100% support our local theaters to Arizona. Shout out to Harkins. We love you guys. And I really think Disney, and so do you, really think Disney kicked themselves when they put that premiere price of the $29.99 to see Black Widow at home. Yes, this might have worked great at the beginning of the pandemic, but let's face it, things are coming back, theaters are coming back, and I mean, if they were going to make it available, they should have made it available maybe 30 days, a month after its theatrical release.
That's what Paramount Plus is doing. 45 days.
30 to 45 days would have made it available on Disney Plus if people truly wanted to save some money. But as ample supporters of our local movie theaters, that's what we wanted to do. That's what we wanted to spend our money on. So
Luca should have been in theaters.
I truly do believe Luca should have been in theaters. I think another, as big of a Disney fan as I am, they make mistakes so much. They're a cute little middle child that just keeps making mistakes. But again, Disney shot themselves in the foot with not having a theatrical release for Luca. It was a really good film, and they should have put their faith in Pixar like they have in the past many times, and it was really good. I personally liked Raya, but my husband sure didn't.
I haven't seen it. I can't believe. I'm usually the one to flock and see them, and I haven't seen it yet.
We don't have to talk about it, but
I really liked it.
it sounds like there were pretty mixed reviews. I liked it myself. I thought it was a very good story. There was no music, no musical numbers, but I thought it had the comedic relief that it needed. I love Awkwafina. I think she's hilarious. And I thought it was perfect. It was a good balance for me. So with that being said, that is the Disney report so far.
All right, and now we're going to get the butter out.
Oh my god!
Don't turn to me when you say that.
Hey, honey, the Last Tango in Paris is coming on TV.
Great, I'll make the popcorn.
Extra butter, please.
Okay, so we're going to get serious now, and we are going to talk about Last Tango in Paris, and we're going to tie that into the topic of sexuality in movies, and even talk about America versus Europe and attitudes towards sex in movies. I've seen Last Tango in Paris. I own it. Marianne, you just saw it. Kitty and Kyle haven't seen it yet, but they have read up on it. And so we're going to talk in general terms for their sake. But the reason why I brought this up and wanted to talk about it was back in late 2016, it must have been a slow news day or something like that. An interview that writer Bernardo Bertolucci gave from 2013 came up online, where he talked about how he should have been kinder to Maria Schneider, the actress who plays Jean in the film. But the movie it's not as graphic as certain things I've seen today. Even the famous butter scene in the movie is pretty tame by comparison. But in Bertolucci's interview, he said he and Marlon Brando were having breakfast at the location in the morning. There was a baguette and there was some butter. And they both looked at each other and saw the butter there, and they didn't tell Maria Schneider about the butter. The scene was planned. It is a rape scene in the film, but they didn't tell her about the butter. He wanted her real reaction, and I kind of dispute that as well. Bertolucci was saying that because, like Marianne and I were talking, it's a complicated choreographed camera shot with the butter. There's no way that could be like she didn't know about it. That would have had to have been a blocked shot. But that interview came to light. It went viral, and everybody on Twitter went in an uproar. Actress Jessica Chastain, she took to Twitter and said, "What you're seeing in the movie is a rape, an actual pre-planned rape by these two predators." And Chris Evans, Captain America himself, called for the arrest of Bertolucci and Marlon Brando, who was already dead, by the way, by that time.
Chris.
Yeah.
It's okay, just dig him up. He's still fresh.
And Maria Schneider herself was conflicted over the years. I mean, she said she felt like she was being raped in the scene. But she also said in her statement, even though what Brando was doing to me was not real, it felt real emotionally. They seem to have forgotten that part, and everybody got up in arms again, and it was almost like cancel Last Tango in Paris, Last Tango in Paris. So that's why I wanted to talk about it, and so that's kind of the backstory of this. So Marianne, you did see it. I've seen it several times. I have to warm myself up to the film, but the last time I watched it a month ago, I'm like, it's pretty tame. And back in the day, it was extremely controversial, but film critic Pauline Kael, who was very influential at the time, she did a major review of it to the point where some of the movie posters had reprinted her full review of it.
Wow.
This is the great cinematic revolution. She compared it to when Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring was performed for the first time in Paris and there was a riot in the theater.
Well, going into it, I just knew that there was this controversial scene and that it was supposed to be a very explicit, like, sexual movie. So I kind of went into it with a little trepidation. As I was watching it, I was like, why are we getting all upset about this movie? Like, this doesn't really seem that big of a deal to me. Like, I wasn't really into the movie either. I wasn't like, oh, this is amazing, that's great, everybody should watch this movie. But I didn't really get what it was, but also consider the fact that I'm 29. And at this point, you know, this movie came out in the 70s and it was a completely different world then. So, I mean, I tried to take that into consideration when watching it. So,
Yeah.
Modern times, for me, it's like, yeah, it's not really a big deal. But I can kind of understand why it would have been a big deal back then, of course, given, I mean, it was in the early 70s. This was right after the sexual revolution of the 60s. And this was right around the big era of when all those porn movies were coming out, like Deep Throat, right? So it seems like it would have fit with the times and it wouldn't have necessarily been super, super controversial. So that was something that I was considering and wondering about when I watched it.
And a lot of those movies, like, you know, Deep Throat and stuff, were shown in legitimate movie theaters.
Mm-hmm.
You had actual, real film critics reviewing them. Why do you think all of a sudden in 2016 it became newsworthy over an old video? All of a sudden, I mean, people are posting about it on Facebook, people who've never even seen the movie.
Cancel culture. It's all about cancel culture. It's only gotten worse and worse throughout the years. And yes, I'm guilty of, you know, canceling something just because of one article. That's just in our nature. But what were we discussing on the way here regarding the controversial? It's all about how the shock value.
Yeah, like there's such an emphasis on getting extreme shock value or realistic impressions or reactions to situations in film, and a lot more care is taken these days than was, you know, back in the 70s and 80s and everything. You know, I was, as you guys were talking, I was thinking about how, was it Emilia Clarke didn't want to have like actual nudity in Game of Thrones,
Right.
and
She had to fight for it.
Yeah, she had a body double, and so there's a lot more care that's taken nowadays. But that doesn't mean that we don't have films that have shock value, like with in Django, with DiCaprio's little scene that he did where he cut his hand, and that was a thing, or in The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger when he does his little spiel.
That was Maggie Gyllenhaal's real reaction.
Yeah. So like there are films that do these controversial things, but it doesn't. It's definitely toned down nowadays, or at least it's more controlled, or there's more consent involved, at least at some level. But we still are a culture that likes to see those things because that's like authentic storytelling right there. You get an authentic reaction out of people. I was thinking it's not so much cancel culture in terms of why we're bringing it up, but more so like literary criticism. Like we're looking back at the things that we've done and we're realizing, oh, we probably shouldn't have done this.
Yeah.
Probably to that degree. That I don't want to apply the right or wrong label on that, because that's a natural progression of, hey, this is what we've done, now let's think about it and compare it to how things are culturally now.
Yeah.
And that's just the natural flow of storytelling anyway. So, especially in like the book world.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, I don't want to say cancel culture. That's a whole other topic altogether that we could have a conversation on. Getting back to Last Tango in Paris, there are some things that nowadays are problematic. The fact that you don't see, I mean, I don't know who would want to, but we don't see Brando fully naked in the film, yet Maria Schneider is full frontal in a lot of scenes.
Yeah.
She's got a scene where she's actually masturbating and grinding the floor. I mean, Brando's not doing anything in that scene, but she's the one actually doing that. So there's kind of a one-sidedness to that, whereas I guess Bertolucci said he did have a shot of Brando totally naked in the film, but
Thank you for sparing
Yeah,
us.
see?
But
Maybe now I'll watch it.
Male nudity is not really a thing in film
Yeah.
right.
as much.
Yeah.
Like even with films that are supposed to be sexual, you don't see a lot of guys that are naked from the shirt down.
Right.
So
Right. And that's kind of one side. I'm not saying I want to see it, but I'm like, if you're going to show women fully naked in a movie,
yeah.
you should show the men fully naked too.
Yep.
It's like we are objectifying one, but we're not doing it with the other. I think it should be equal. But
That reminds me of the controversy with Watchmen, how people like refused to see that film just because Dr. Manhattan was naked. The shots. And people adamantly were like,
most of it was CGI.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter.
That ain't him, folks.
It doesn't matter. Like it made people so bothered that people were boycotting the film for a while.
Well, but I mean, about Last Tango in Paris, and then we can move on from there. I mean, I do think it's kind of dated. I do think it's a great film, or I should say a good film. Bertolucci's done better, I think. The Conformist is a heck of a movie, which was the movie that brought him to international prominence, where directors like Scorsese, Spielberg, and Coppola went and took notice and said, and fought Paramount to get it released here in America in the early 70s. And I mean, Last Emperor, which he won all the Oscars for, is perfect. I think that's perfect. Not a false note in that. It's one of my favorite movies, The Last Emperor. The Sheltering Sky is another problematic one that he did. I like it, but if you've read the book, he took all the complexity out of the book.
Don't they always?
Yeah. Well, a movie's a movie and a book is a book. The Sheltering Sky is really an unfilmable book, It really is, but he attempted to film it. But those desert panorama shots in the film are really good. Shout out to one of my favorite cinematographers who was Bertolucci's partner up until recently, Vittorio Storaro. She heard me praising him.
Yep, I did.
She saw him in Hearts of Darkness, A Filmmaker's Apocalypse.
Oh.
Yeah, he was in there.
Right.
He said,
yeah.
He said, Francis told me,
yes, that's right. Yes.
Vittorio, we're not making a documentary about the war in Vietnam. This is the main shot in that wherever Americans go, they make a big show.
Right, I remember, yeah.
And Bertolucci talked, since he passed away, talked like this. And then people say, Bertolucci, who want to make a controversy. I'm not trying to make a controversy. I just thought showing the penises in the hand, it was... Which there is, in 1900, if you want to see Robert De Niro in all his glory...
I really do not.
And Gerard Depardieu, I just thought showing the penises in her hand, it was innocent. That's what I looked. I wasn't trying to be a controversy. It was innocent, because that's the way we are in the country, which is what it's about. So, there we go.
Probably a great lead into Europe versus America.
They're all about holding penises in their hands.
In Europe, they do have a different mentality towards sex in movies.
They hold their pinky out.
Oh, honey.
I mean...
The whole time.
I mean, Marianne was talking about in her treatment here. She didn't see the movie. Blue is the warmest color. I saw the scene that matters. But they're also trash that border on the line of pornography. I never saw the movie. I read Ebert's 1-star or 0-star review of it, and it's in his
0 stars. Yikes.
and it's in his book. I hated this movie, but Criterion felt pretentious enough to release it as part of the Criterion collection. I Am Curious Yellow. It's a Swedish film about two young adults, very young adults, and their sexual curiosity, and it's not faked in the film.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not faked.
Okay.
You could say that they're like maybe 16, 17. That's all I know
I hadn't
of
heard
it.
of it until you just said
I Am Curious Yellow. You could buy it on Criterion. The 50%
Great.
off sale, Barnes & Noble. You should buy it. So tell me if it's good.
Okay. I'll get right on that.
I won't watch it.
Barnes & Noble clerk. That sounds like a fun movie.
I Am
I'll
Curious
take
Yellow. There's also an I Am Curious Blue. It's the sequel
Oh,
to I Am Curious Yellow.
wonderful.
But they do have a different attitude. I remember a friend of mine from high school, we were hanging out in the 90s and our 20s after, he was always telling me about how they think of sex differently in Europe. There's no such thing as bad sex. It's all sex, and all sex is good. I beg to differ, but that's...
I'm sorry, my 2016 Tinder dates beg to differ.
But that's what he said, and you take a look at the films in Europe, the sexual films are pretty frank, and sometimes there's body doubles. There's that movie that I didn't see it, but that Lars von Trier did with Willem Dafoe. I'm not a fan of Lars von Trier. I'm not.
I've never seen it.
I think he's, But I guess the sex in the film is real, not with the actual big name actors. Like Willem Dafoe. He used body doubles for them, but their body doubles actually do it.
Okay.
And I'm like, I don't know if I want to see that. And it's not acting. You're really doing it. Well, taking this back to Bertolucci, Donald Sutherland does bash a cat in the head in the movie 1900. He plays the bad fascist character who's not a three-dimensional character one bit. He's bad, he's a fascist, and you're going to hate him because fascism is bad. And socialism is good. That's primarily the ultimate story of the padrones in Italy. They need to be down, and the partisan is up.
He does a good job playing a bad guy.
Who?
Donald Sutherland.
Oh, and that. But back then in the 70s, he played a lot of good roles. I mean, Don't Look Now, which I think is one of his best performances. He is the victim in that film. Really good film directed by Nicholas Roeg. That was a film about sexuality, where there's a great scene, and Spielberg himself said it's probably one of the best sex scenes in any film between him and Julie Christie. What Roeg does is he intercuts during the sex scene and post-sex when they are getting dressed and just having a bunch of shy smiles at each other, and then back, and a lot of people were like, Julie Christie and Donald Sutherland actually did it in that film. Donald Sutherland put those rumors to bed on the Blu-ray. He said, there was no chance in hell of Julie Christie and I ever doing it, because I just met her for one thing. This was like the second day of shooting, and the camera was an unblimped Aeroflex. Do you know the sound of an unblimped Aeroflex? It's like... So it was all handheld, but it looks very erotic, and I like that scene. It's these two people who are starting to drift apart, trying to connect again, and that's a scene that is worthy. It's erotic without being
gratuitous.
You're right.
Yeah.
I think I like that sort of thing as opposed to another quote from Last Tango in Paris.
Oh boy.
Shove your fingers up my ass.
I feel like you could frame that and just hang it on a wall.
10 out of 10 would
10 out of 10.
I mean,
just make that your review.
I mean, Brando tells Maria Schneider's character in the film to do that after he says, I love you. I'm in love with you. Yeah. Cut your fingernails on these two fingers.
Yeah.
Then shove your fingers up my ass. Huh? I said, shove your fingers up my ass. Are you deaf? And then he starts going on this monologue. I'm going to get a pig. And I'm going to have you fuck the pig. And I'm going to have you smell the dying fart of the pig. Will you do that for me? Yes! And more than that! And more than that!
That's the end of
The
the
two
movie.
people who haven't seen this movie are looking in horror.
I am horrified. But then again,
It's kind of funny now.
Okay, but to be fair, think about other gratuitous films that have been controversial, like Human Centipede or Hostel, and things like that. And it's like, I guess in retrospect, is that really that bad? What do you guys think?
You know what? No, and considering I don't want to see Centipede. That's just not my thing.
I've seen clips and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I saw, and we could tie this in because it's an Italian film as well, released by United Artists. It's by another great Italian filmmaker, Pier Pasolini. Great filmmaker, but it was his last film. He died right after post-production. He was murdered. His lover murdered him, actually.
Oh my god.
why not?
That sounds like a movie itself.
And it's called Salo, or 120 Days of Sodom.
This one. Oh god.
I actually bought the Criterion Collection version of it, and I actually sold it back to Zia's. I don't own it anymore, and I won't. It's a loose adaptation of Desade's
120 Days of Sodom, but set in the end of fascist Italy, in what the fascists had set up as their capital in the town of Salo. They kidnapped these people from the town, and I decided to prepare myself because I read about it. I watched all the making of stuff. There's extensive making of stuff behind the scenes to show you that it's fake.
Did it do it for you? Still?
No, it didn't. I tried to watch it. I tried to watch some of the scenes of rape in the film, some of the scenes of torture. The last sequence of the film is them torturing all the remaining, the fascists torturing and raping all the remaining survivors. So you got decapitations, you got eyes being plucked out, you have a rape happening in the corner there. There's a scene where they have a banquet of shit. They bring it out in trays and they're eating it. It's getting in their teeth. They're being forced to eat excrement. And that's preceded by another scene where one of the peasants yells at one of the fascists and he cops a squat. Comes out and he goes, "Mangia! Mangia!" and forces her to eat it. So, and then after that, there's a banquet of that. I'm like, and I found out that it was made, how it was made. It was candied chocolate with banana and whatever, but it looks very realistic.
Well, why film that?
I guess he was trying to make. There's a friend of mine who actually likes the film and was trying to explain the whole political side of it, and I'm like, okay, maybe I need to watch it with you so you could explain it to me. But I'm like, it was banned for the longest time, but once. Yeah. But once an edited version came out in America, but still, it was like, I tried to watch it. I mean, the craftsmen that are Italian craftsmen. You have one of the greatest Italian filmmakers with Pasolini. Ennio Morricone did the music. Dante Ferretti, who's been working with Scorsese since Casino. Gangs in New York, he was the production designer, the art director. Tonino Delicali, who did a lot of Sergio Leone stuff, is the cinematographer. So the craftsman behind the camera, and I'm watching this thing, or trying to watch it, I'm like, I don't get the fucking point, and I'm just disgusted and getting sick out of my mind. Yeah. I'm turning it off. And I don't want to own this.
Good for you, bro.
Some films just go a little too far.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, if you're going to have freedom of expression, you have to invite every possible scenario, every possible polarized opinion or not polarized opinion in every spectrum or direction that you could think of. So
right.
It's not totally surprising that someone would do that to push the boundary.
Right.
Like, as somebody who studies literature, my whole thing is like, what does it serve in the plot?
Right.
Like, what purpose thematically or symbolically? Like, you said your friend could explain it. But when you have, like, multiple scenes doing that just for shock value, is it just for shock value, or is it actually doing something thematically to tell a story?
Right.
Yeah.
And it could be pointing out, having, like, gratuitous rape scenes or scenes of sexual violence or whatever. It could be to identify how things like that have happened in history.
Right.
But is that doing anything for the audience to teach them why it matters, why it's wrong?
Right.
Like, why we should still talk about it? Is it doing anything like that, or is it just showing it just to shock the audience?
Right. And Pasolini, I have it down there, he has a very good trilogy of films that he did right before that. It's called his Trilogy of Life. The first film I can't pronounce, but these are based on great works of literature. Canterbury Tales is one of them, and the one that won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, Arabian Nights. And that has sex in there. Mm-hmm. That has violence. But I could watch it, and I'm like, this is good. This is a point, and Arabian Nights is pretty violent and erotic anyways, if you have read it. So I totally get it. I mean, Canterbury Tales is...
very sexually charged.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I totally get it, and it works for me. Same people involved, but then when I saw, Salo, Shaka. Now, Last Tango in Paris, same producer as Salo too, Alberto Grimaldi.
Sounds like he's a little...
No, in fact, he fought with Bertolucci on 1900. He fought with him totally. Bertolucci wanted 5 hours, 11 minutes. He said, "No, what, you crazy? I'm locking you in the editing room."
And you cut it down to, what, 5 hours?
Yeah. But, Alberto Grimaldi is a good producer. He is the one who really started the Italian Westerns, actually.
Right.
And he produced 2 for Sergio Leone. Mm-hmm. But, Last Tango in Paris was not made for shock value. That's the one thing. That was not made for shock value. But I remember, I think I told you this, Ingmar Bergman, he made a statement about it. And this would be interesting if they decided to do a remake of Last Tango in Paris. He said, the movie makes sense if it was about a homosexual couple.
Yeah.
And then I thought about that. I'm like,
actually.
yes, I can see that. Or maybe I'm usually against remakes, but I'd be in favor of a remake from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Maybe an older woman being the dominant one against a younger man, or maybe a same-sex couple doing it. I doubt there would be a remake, but I mean, but at the same time, think of where we are nowadays. That was made by a major Hollywood studio. Major Hollywood studio, United Artists, which was probably the best studio to begin with at that time. And then on the other hand, when a new regime took over at United Artists, and they basically gave poor old Michael Cimino a blank check, you had Heaven's Gate, and United Artists went down with it. That's a different movie topic, but I think it's a good movie. But that was made by a major Hollywood studio. And I will say that no Hollywood studios will take a chance like that on even Sexuality nowadays. It's all streaming. Even a film with such complicated characters like that. Where is that?
That's just because Hollywood needs Sexuality to be grounded with a purpose, with a plot. Like I was looking at your wall of movies, and I was thinking like, oh, The Shape of Water, The Fountain, or Titanic. Like those are all films that have intense sexual scenes, but they're all framed around the context of what's happening with the characters, and there's nothing gratuitous, even though people say they're gratuitous. But they have it serve a very, very particular purpose in the plot. And with streaming, I was thinking about like how Netflix put out Gerald's Game, and they used a gratuitous sexual scene to set up the conflict of the story.
Right.
And so it's like streaming services, I think, have more flexibility with taking risks, whereas Hollywood has to have like this defined parameter for what they can do and can't do, especially because of things like what movies have come before in previous decades.
Right.
But with as big as Netflix is now, are they Hollywood?
Yes, are they slowly becoming Hollywood? Yeah.
What's the next, to move on here, what is the next in this topic?
Well,
we already talked about
Europe. Talked about a lot of them.
You brought Basic Instinct up.
Well, I wrote that down, but I haven't seen it, so I wasn't gonna...
You haven't seen Basic Instinct?
No, I haven't. I read about it. I read Sharon Stone's autobiography when she talked about it, but I haven't actually seen it.
I will say, I don't know what she's going on about now, I don't know what she's going on about now, how Paul Verhoeven didn't tell her that he was going to show her, show the world.
And she shouldn't have gone commando.
Right. I mean, she's in costume. She's already not in commando. How did she not know?
I think that's what she said in the autobiography, if I remember correctly. She was talking about it, and she said, nowadays it's like, how did I not realize that? Or because they had told her it was like for lighting or something, I think.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
I think it was maybe a case of she was still considered to be, like an up-and-comer in Hollywood, so she didn't want to, ruffle feathers, probably.
In the heat of the moment, most people are just going to be like, oh, okay, it's for the scene, I just have to do it. It's only in hindsight that all these actors and actresses can look back and be like, oh wow, I shouldn't have done that,
I think a lot of it is in hindsight, because for the longest time she was known as that person and what she did, and it was so parodied in Hot Shots Part 2 and the classic, sarcastically, Loaded Weapon 1.
Loaded Weapon.
With Emilio Estevez and
like,
Samuel L. Jackson with the parody of Lethal Weapon. Kathy Ireland uncrosses her leg in that one, and everybody in the precinct goes, yeah! But you're kind of quiet. Why don't you give us some of your thoughts?
You can pass.
You just don't forget.
I mean, here,
intentionally, just slowly lifting your leg. Somebody at one point said, "You want to be a star, kid? You gotta show your vagina."
You gotta do
you gotta do.
It's not a long zoom lens shot. It's that's a shot that was set up for that.
Purposefully made shot. But
heat of the moment.
Like you said, heat of the moment.
It's not like they're aren't times where people aren't taken advantage of. Think of like the Wizard of Oz,
Yeah.
you know, and all the controversy with that. It's like people just fall into these situations where they are pressured to perform for a role, and you know, in the heat of the moment, especially the younger or less experienced you are in Hollywood, the more likely you will be to just go along with it.
You do it because you want to have a name for yourself.
Yeah, it takes a certain amount of clout for a person to step back and just be like, no, I won't do this. So the clout is important. Not everyone has that. They don't have that ability to say no on set.
Yep.
Right. And you were talking about
intimacy coaches nowadays.
Right. So after the whole Harvey Weinstein thing, and I don't know how long it's been going on now, but it's been in the last few years.
Scott Rudin is the new one now, and Broadway's trying to bury that one.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. So they've started hiring intimacy coordinators, just like they're doing as if it's a dance choreography or fight choreography, and I think that's great. You know, you're setting it up at the beginning. Everybody knows what the other person's boundaries are. You know exactly what's going to happen. There's no surprise. Here's some butter or something.
She did.
You know what is going to happen, and you can say no, or you can say, you know, yeah, let's go forward with that. And I think that's great that they do that now, and they should probably do it all the time.
It totally reminds me of the two characters in Love Actually.
Oh yeah.
When they have to practice, they're the stand-ins for the
Can you just do it this way a little more? Yeah.
I mean, you could totally say, I don't want butter, I want Crisco. But
or plant-based if you're vegan.
Oh my god.
I mean, I think it's a good idea. I think it's frustrating for some directors because, like Oliver Stone in a recent interview said, there's too many consultants now that have to be on the set. That's why I don't want to direct a film. You have to have a consultant for COVID. You have to have a consultant for sex. You have to have I mean, and to be totally honest, almost every single director out there, they like to blur the lines when it comes to the sexuality in their films. It's so great. They don't like to get technical and say, okay, so we had him over here and the camera here, and and with the spacing, you were able to make it seem like they're actually doing it. I mean, no, you got like, I remember Spike Lee, when Jungle Fever came out, said we have to take the headphones off on that scene because of the noises were just so loud. I mean, he said, all I can tell you is the dynamics in that scene were real. And even the graphic rape scene in Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, David Fincher's got a featurette on the making, which I think is more difficult than anything in Last Tango in Paris. He still doesn't say how they blocked it. He makes it seem like they actually did the deed. And they had to, because he's like, it's kind of uncomfortable for an actress to have a male thrusting his another regions inside her. And that's how he said, I'm like, so you mean he actually did put on a condom and he actually did that to her in the scene? I don't know how I feel about that now. Even the scene with Halle Berry and Billy Bob Thornton in Monsters Ball, which I saw the damn thing, and I saw something of Billy Bob Thornton's that I shouldn't have seen when she was on top of him.
Oh no.
Yeah, I saw, and I guess he
but she got an Oscar for it.
Yay!
I want to feel good. That's what she says, and that's how it happens. And then the next thing you know, it's like animalistic. It's like
Catwoman.
like
Sorry, Halle Berry.
Man. But it's like I guess Billy Bob Thornton did come out and say, as much as I would have liked to, we're just two professional actors, and it was just really choreographed and rehearsed.
Now pay attention to my music career.
Yeah. I mean,
do you think Tommy Wiseau would have benefited from
Oh my god.
well, shit.
Oh no.
He was going at it sideways.
That would have made the movie a 10.
Hitting your belly button almost. Horrible.
As
what they said?
I did not.
What a funny story, Mark.
Do you think he pet her and said, "You're my favorite customer"? That was the aftercare.
Oh,
know what?
God.
God bless Tommy Wiseau, because
He did something
knows-
I
The
always
man
wanted to do.
has courage. The
he
man
has courage. He's got money, and he's, you know.
He's like Neil Breen.
Oh, God.
We'll talk about Neil Breen later, but
No.
I have to give it to him, because for as much as people make fun of him and The Room, he's living it up.
He's living it up now.
He's totally like, oh yeah, I'm just
Any
gonna take it
publicity
all.
is good publicity.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I gotta give him credit. He made a movie, had it shown in the movie theaters.
Yeah.
He technically filmed the movie twice because he filmed it at 2 different kinds of cameras at the same time.
Oh right, he
shit.
did. He
So
did
he did
digital
double the
and
work.
analog.
Yeah, he did digital,
Or
and,
digital and film.
at the same
Yeah,
time.
that's
for
right.
every
He
single-
Oh,
He
my.
bought both the cameras, didn't he?
Yep.
Yeah.
So he filmed 2 films at the same time.
Wow.
That's more than any of us have done.
Yeah. God bless you, Tommy Wiseau. Just
But it takes effort to make a movie that's so bad that it's good.
yeah.
You know, compare that to, I was watching one of my YouTube people that I follow, and they were talking about Ace Ventura Jr. and how it has a 0% of Rotten Tomatoes. And he's showing clips of it. I'm just like, this is a movie that they had like something ludicrous, like over $100 million to make this film.
Oh my God.
And it ended up with 0% of Rotten Tomatoes, and it's terrible. And compare that to like The Room, which is a bad movie that's good. So
Well.
there's something to say for the effort and passion that goes into filmmaking, you know.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know. Versus making like a cash cow, shock value, or a money maker type of film.
another Disney remake, which Marianne and I have had those debates about Disney remakes. But not to get too far off the topic, I guess we're almost done
Off
here.
topic.
Well, I guess we're almost done here, so we
I
can
have more
do.
that I can say, but
We can dedicate
here,
this last hour to
Talk,
Neil
talk,
Breen.
Marianne.
well, something that you could go back to, the topic I brought up earlier of like the gratuitous scenes is, I thought a good example of a not gratuitous sex scene would be the Terminator, because that's like part of the whole plot.
Yeah.
Is, you know, that
That's
John Connor
so
has to be
beautiful.
born
Right.
in order to,
Yeah.
like, that's kind of half of the point of the whole story. Not
I
even
thought it was
of the
beautiful.
scene. Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying it is or isn't. Like, things like that are examples of good reasons to have a sex scene.
Yeah.
And but another side of that equation, not for that movie, but just in general, is yeah, you might have times where a sex scene makes sense, but you also could ask, is it necessary to show all of it? Like, what about in the old days where it was just like a hint, like, you know, they panned up to the window or something, or
They did like a.
like, we get it, they're gonna have
Dissolve.
sex, or, you know,
Yeah.
go to the next day. Like,
Scorsese-
so what about the actual act of sex
Right.
that's necessary?
Scorsese is actually very good at that. There's only one film. I mean, a lot of people think Scorsese's got a lot of sex in his films. When you watch his movies, only one film in recent years has actual, like, simulated sex in it, and that's The Wolf of Wall Street.
Right.
Where butts are going up and down, you know the whole thing. That's the only one.
Uncomfortable movie.
Yeah, it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But that is the one that has the simulated sex. There's a great scene in Raging Bull before Robert De Niro as Jake LaMotta is supposed to go to his fight and do his third Sugar Ray Robinson fight. Begins with the girl he's seeing, Kathy Moriarty. He goes, "No, come here. I can't. You told me to never touch you before a fight. Come here." So she goes, and it's very slow. He says, "Touch my bruise on my face," and she touches it, and then kisses him, and then he tells her, "Take off your take off my pants," and then he says, "Take off the rest." He doesn't show it now, and then he tells her to take off her panties, and then she lifts up his shirt and starts to kiss his chest. Beautiful, close-up shots of it, and she gets lower and lower, and just right before she's about to go to that area, he goes, no, stop. I can't fool around. I gotta fight Robinson. I can't fool around. And I thought, hearing the audio commentary on the disc, Thelma Schoonmaker says, a lot of people think Marty has a lot of sex in his films because there is like
Tension.
right,
Yeah.
but he really. He had to do it like in his very, very, very first movie because he couldn't get a distributor. Who's that knocking at my door? He had to go to Amsterdam and cut in a nude sex scene. It's like, it sticks out in the film too. It's like right there. The conversation's happening, then all of a sudden splice to this sequence that was shot in Amsterdam. She says that he feels it takes away from the story. So to just do a suggestion, even in Last Temptation of Christ, the big controversial scene in Last Temptation of Christ, there's no simulated movement in it. I mean, it's Jesus, Willem Dafoe on top of Mary Magdalene, kissing and hugging, and she says the key line, we can have a child, we can have a child. And that's it. Cancel Last Temptation of Christ!
Oh boy.
Yeah, that's what it was. But I like it when it's not totally shown and it's more implied, depending on the story. You know, Oliver Stone doing a film on Jim Morrison, you have to have that scene there, which was not Val Kilmer, and they didn't tell Kathleen Quinlan. They were about to do the shot, and his double gets right by her. She goes, no, we're about to do the... Val's in his trailer. He doesn't want to do the shot. He doesn't want to do this. So it's his body double in that scene.
So in sum, women are never told anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, I wanted to bring up something. So, sorry.
Yeah.
The whole time you were describing that, all I was thinking about is the thermometer scene from Kung Pao. Like when it was like, oh, you broke a thermometer in my hand, and then she's like, rub it into my hair, and so I was thinking about that. But my ADD brain transitioned to The Matrix, and we're talking about like films that have implied sexual scenes or whatever. I want to talk about how The Matrix 2 was hurt by having a sex scene in it.
That extended dance sex sequence?
Yes, okay. So,
First one.
in the second Matrix film, there's a scene where Neo and Trinity make love.
Yeah.
And it's framed and shot in a way that's supposed to be passionate and realistic, whatever. Even as an adult, like, I didn't like it as a teenager because it was really awkward just having a very, like, you think about the Titanic, and the Titanic was, a graphic, sexual scene.
And it's PG-13.
Yeah, but then The Matrix 2 is like, you see a lot of close-ups of, both Neo and Trinity rubbing on each other and humping and everything like that. And even as an adult, I'm just like, this is so not necessary.
Yeah.
Like, I understand that they're in love. I don't need to see that they're in love in that way.
Right.
And I feel like it's actually a detriment to the film. They didn't need that scene at all. They could have just had their little rave dancing and just call it good.
Yeah, it's almost like having a sex scene in Star Wars, actually.
Yeah, it's like, I think totally, completely off the wall, and they didn't need it at all.
Right.
And it takes away from everything. Because, again, I'm going back to, the fountain in the shape of water, and it's like, those scenes were so perfectly framed within the context of the story
Yeah.
that it works, it makes sense, the characters would do that. It's interesting to see because it fits everything. But then, a movie about science fiction, people shooting things and going to a computer simulated world, totally out of context, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, while also cutting to, people flicking sweat into the air.
Oh god, it's so gross. Every time I see it, I'm like, eh.
I get it thematically. Didn't work for me. Didn't do anything for me. Didn't need to be in the film.
And mind you, the Matrix trilogy is his favorite.
I still haven't seen the last one, and I'm going to.
You do? Oh.
But yeah, don't tell me. I know they
My
died.
dad loves those.
I know they died.
He's very...
Which is why I want to know, how are they doing a 4?
Yeah.
Does he come back to life or somehow? Is it? I don't know.
He comes back as John Wick.
There is.
There is the John Wick cinematic universe.
It's only John Wick
I
4.
want John Wick to be connected to the Matrix. That would be an amazing thing.
That would be good.
So cool.
Well, for sure.
Lawrence Fishburne's already in it.
True.
They have everything there. They just need to hint at something just to make it work.
Multiverse.
That's all.
Multiverse.
The Pauly Shore multiverse.
That was hilarious.
Well, what about Nobody was supposed to... It was made by the exact same team that made John Wick.
God, I gotta see that.
I know,
Yeah,
we haven't seen it either.
We haven't seen it.
Damn it.
Oh, I've seen it. What I've seen that nobody else has.
So,
Oh my
but
god.
it's a miracle.
It's not connected to John Wick, right?
No, not at all.
See, they should have done that. It has thematically very similar things. Even the actual objects or props in the film, very similar. They should have just made the connection.
I saw the last John Wick film. I went and saw it with Dan, and Went and saw it with Dan, and because I didn't see the other two, I didn't know what the hell was going on.
Yeah,
I'm like,
Shouldn't have done that.
I'm like, I just see wall-to-wall action here. That's what I'm seeing.
But it's well
There's
done.
Yeah. Oh, it is. It is very good.
Story.
Yes.
We saw all three. It was the thing that Harkins did. It was all three movies
Back to back.
back to
Oh,
back.
wow.
We started at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon and ended
That's
at like
cool.
9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Worth it. You got popcorn, a soda, and you got
Metal whiskey rocks.
metal
Oh, nice.
whiskey,
Or
yeah,
stone,
cubes.
whiskey stones, yeah.
Metal whiskey stones. The whole John Wick bag.
That's cool.
That was so cool. I was like,
That's
I'm
awesome.
into it. Yeah, all three movies back to back. You gotta watch the first two.
I want to get them on 4K. And
It's-
I know they sell all three of them together.
The
so-
simplicity of the first one and how it like transitioned into Parabellum, the last one. Just
And like even with John Wick, setting up a romance in the beginning of the film, they did that in the first 10 or 15 minutes. Barely had to show anything,
Yeah.
and you understood the main character's passion for his wife.
Yeah.
Like
Wow,
you
okay.
didn't need anything more. And so going back to like everything we're talking about, do you need gratuitous scenes in order to communicate a theme or a conflict or a
Yeah.
plot device? No, you don't. And I think earlier in our discussion, I was thinking about Quentin Tarantino and how he's obsessed with showing certain things in his films, like people eating or things like that. And it's like, to a degree.
I know.
No, I know.
I know where
But
you're going.
realistically, I'm thinking like, okay, art is a mode for people to express whatever desires or thoughts they have, and so it's like, yeah, to a certain degree, it could be the creative team expressing something that they have in their brain pent up or in their imagination, and they're using film to express that as an art form.
Yeah.
And it's like, I get that. But when you're talking about like a poop buffet, I'm just like,
Yeah.
either that's like their thing and they're just, I think that gratuitous scenes don't serve a purpose, or at least if they're going to be in, they have to have context to make it work.
Kind of like, I just thought about it. Spielberg only has a handful of R-rated films. And I kind of often said that if he had a sex scene in the film, I bet you he's going to have a simulated scene. And 2 films. I mean, Schindler's List has that scene where one of his workers walks up to tell him about Chuck Stern's character has been mistakenly put on the train, and he interrupts him while he's having sex.
Right.
Girl gets on top of Oscar Schindler, and she starts going up and down. And in Munich, I know he ties it into the main character's guilt about the violence and what happened in Munich on Black September, but it's during a pretty intense sex scene where it just happens. They're talking on the bed, and then he jump cuts to Eric Bana going up and down, back and forth, doing the movement, and then he cuts to the footage of the athletes being killed by the terrorists, and sweat dripping in slow motion from Eric Bana's face going in and out of the camera with his head. It's a pretty, for Spielberg in a sex scene, it's a graphic scene if you've ever seen Munich. And I did say I know what he's getting at, but did that scene have to be in there? Was Spielberg trying to prove he can do a sex scene? I don't know.
I mean, it's an unanswerable question unless you're the person themselves or you have them here to ask.
Yeah.
We're never gonna know. It could be them pushing the boundary themselves, like getting out of their comfort zone. It could be because they want to make it visceral for the audience or something like that. I guess that's just kind of the joy of art and film and video games and music, is you get some sort of interaction out of the audience or player, reader, whatever, and you get to reflect on that as much as you can, and that's it. I don't know.
Kyle just kind of put the period on this whole thing right now.
Oh, did he?
I think he
I
did.
feel like you did. And he usually does that.
Does anybody else have anything to add?
Sure.
Go watch Kung Pao.
Go watch the first 2 John Wicks.
I'm gonna buy them.
Go watch The Matrix.
Sorry, Tiff.
Well, I thought, since we were talking about John Wick and The Matrix, something similar to what we've been saying, the whole sex thing, is how, and going back to US versus Europe, is most American films, we don't have any issue with having tons and tons of violence, tons of gore,
Yeah.
tons.
True.
But you show a woman's vagina, like, oh, that's it. You can't show that movie.
Yeah.
Whereas it's probably the opposite in Europe. It's like you
Sure.
show all that blood and gore, like you're gonna run into some problems.
They're
But
just like,
sex, who
wow,
cares?
this film is so American. All
Yeah,
blood
and
and
I think
gore.
that's interesting because I know sometimes America is considered to be a puritanical society,
Yes.
and this is just an example of how, like with 50 Shades of Grey. I mean, that was a huge controversy, kind of. I remember it being
Oh, yeah.
somewhat controversial, but it was also like positive because I know there was a lot of talk online before they filmed it and while they were casting, like, who's going to be Christian Grey? And Charlie Hunnam got cast,
James
and everyone's like, oh my god, and then he dropped out, and then everybody.
I think quite a few
And by
guys.
everybody, it was probably just the women who read the books. Probably, probably not everybody literally, but
It should have been an older man. Who would I have cast if I made the film?
Ooh, a dream cast for 50 Shades.
But is it even a controversial movie, really?
I'll make it controversial.
It's not like
listen,
we
I
have
remember
both seen it.
Yeah, we've seen all of it, and I
It's
think
not
they're pretty
really-
entertaining. But they're not.
Yeah.
There's no real shock value to it. That I don't think it's very controversial.
Yeah.
There are.
Well, it's,
yeah.
Daniel Day-Lewis. He
Oh,
would have gotten
God.
into total character, and he would have actually done it.
Yikes.
as someone who hasn't seen it, I mean, isn't it
don't know.
essentially, isn't it like a recipe book for basically an abusive relationship?
Yeah, that's the thing that I don't like about it. I don't care about the sex stuff. It's just like
Yeah.
Not if you're part of the Christian right. You have to be submissive to your man.
I really don't think
they're not married.
Yeah, no, they're not married. I just don't think it was controversial, or, like in my eyes. Yeah,
There should have been butter.
It wasn't me this time.
I just remember, I don't know if you remember this, but before 50 Shades came out, you saw people changing their Facebook profiles. This person isn't going to see 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh my
because-
god!
Like, do you remember that?
Yes.
It's so weird that I just randomly remember that because I don't know why they made it that big of a deal. I even remember when the book was a big deal because I think it was Rihanna who was like, oh my god, you have to read this book. It's so hot. And I was like,
You have to read this book.
I mean, it was a
listen.
book that originated from
Twilight
fan
fan
fiction.
Yes.
How good could it possibly be?
Well,
That don't even
listen.
Setting the bar really, really low here. That person clearly doesn't read.
If you don't know, there's an after series if you've heard of that.
As someone who has read some smut in my day, that
Harlequin
is
romance novels.
that is extremely tame. Extremely tame. But hey, it became popular. And
It became mainstream
It became
housewife material.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. You want to talk about like gratuitous or like controversial stuff? Sorry, I'm looking
Are you
at
just picking out his
Okay,
I'm
movies?
looking at your wall of movies. And
I got more over here too, and I
I know,
got
I
some
was
up
like-
there. I got some behind
like
you.
I keep looking, your stacks of movies here, and I'm like, oh, Old Boy, bro. Remember the
God.
controversy with Old Boy?
Oh,
The original one.
The original one.
Yeah.
Yeah, about how the main character like falls in love and has sex with his own daughter, and doesn't know what he's doing. Like,
Yeah.
I was just thinking, like, okay, it fits the context of the plot, the conflict, everything. It fits, and like even what happens to the main character in the end of the film, because Old Boy is like a retelling of Oedipus Rex.
Yeah.
And so it's like it all comes full circle, and it all makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as long as you justify scenes like that with a good enough reason or context of the plot, I think it can work.
Yeah.
But with the whole butter scene that we're talking about, I don't see the value, don't see the point. But I haven't
Right.
seen the film, so
Right.
I'm looking at this from like outsider's perspective.
I don't think it was gratuitous. I think it shows just how tortured the character Paul is really getting, because she's talking to him about family secrets, and he's, doesn't have a family right now. His wife just committed suicide, and he's thinking that this relationship is going to be able to help him get over this thing, and no matter what the hell he's doing, he's just getting more twisted in a knot. The interesting thing about the film is that at the end of the film, spoiler alert, at the end of the film, she tries to end it with him. He meets her on the Paris street, and he goes, "Hey, it's me." And she goes, "It's over." Yeah, when something's over, it begins again. I want to tell you about myself. My name is Paul. I'm 35. My wife just committed suicide. And he starts telling her about himself. And the interesting thing about it is that she ends up killing him at the end of the movie. It's like once he finally reveals himself to her and tells her how much he's in love with her, after he's chasing, after the movie's called The Last Tango in Paris because they both wind up drunk during that scene at a tango competition.
Right.
So does it come full circle, do you think? Do you think thematically does that justify the context of the scene?
I kind of think though that it's more like it was fun for her when it was anonymous and didn't know a damn thing about him, but now that he has revealed herself to him, he's uninteresting, and
it ruins the mystery.
Yeah. And the interesting thing, I'm always trying to figure out the last line of the film. She shoots him, and he walks out to the balcony. He goes, "Our children." Yes, it does come full circle.
How do you feel about the actress saying that it, like, in a later interview, that it felt like rape? And
yeah, it's not just her. Even Brando, I told this to Marianne. He wouldn't talk to Bertolucci for years after they made the movie, until he was dying, and Bertolucci decided to reach out to him because Bertolucci played some tricks with him. I mean, Brando. First off, I think he's the kind of actor who has cue cards.
Yeah.
He, some people say it was because he was lazy, but he said no, because it makes me spontaneous. So a lot of his lines would be written on cue cards and stuff. But he got him to give improvs on screen as action is going about Paul's life, which is Brando's life. There's a scene in the film. It's an uncut shot, just a close-up of Brando, where he tells this story to Jean. She wants to know more about him. So he does sort of let his guard down. And the story that he tells is about when he was a kid, he wanted to take this girl to a basketball game. His parents owned a farm. And his parents forced him to milk a cow before he went on this date. It was a basketball game, and he went to pick up the girl, and it smelled like cow shit in the car every time. And that is an actual story that happened to Marlon Brando when he was a kid, and it's in his autobiography. So he got him on camera to reveal things about his own life that he never would have revealed. Mm-hmm. And Brando had said the same thing. I feel like I was mentally raped by Bertolucci. He totally went and manipulated me, and he would not talk to him for several years because of the games that he played to get him to be more vulnerable on screen.
I mean, it sounds like I hesitate to even say this because it's going to sound so cheesy, but like the capitalistic, we have to push out the product kind of mentality. And like, because like I think about the video game industry and how like in the video game industry developers are like abused, where they're forced to work like long hours and things like that just to get the game done. So it's like, it's kind of like that. It's bad directing because directors have a vision and they're willing to throw everyone under the train in the process in order to get it done. And at the expense of the mental and emotional stability of the actors and actresses involved. So I think having, like what you said earlier, intimacy coaches is very important because it's like a safeguard for, to make sure everyone's okay with everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
if you're a good director, you should have other methods of getting...
Hey, he's an Academy Award-winning director.
Well, the
Did I say he was bad?
The Academy's full of shit,
At what
man.
cost?
He won.
I'm just saying
The
that
Last Emperor is perfection.
as somebody, you and I, Brian, have made a short film together.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't. I would just like to see that these people who are making art be a little bit more not
receptive.
or not even that, but like if you really want to be good at your job, like you're gonna have to you're gonna have to be working. You're gonna have to improvise. You're gonna have to come up with other methods and not just be like.
Right.
This is the only way to get a
Except
reaction from you.
except I will
that's
say,
the only way you know how.
Right. I will say Bertolucci though would disagree with you calling him a capitalist. He was a proud Italian communist.
That American mentality of like, well, let's push it out. It kind of reminds me of how Jackie Chan and his whole team of martial artists all work together for months on end to build that trust with each other.
Yeah.
In order to do even the most basic action scenes. And I feel like, if you're trying to make a romance film or a film that has like sexual content or whatever, you don't have that amount of time to build the trust between director, actor, actress, and everyone else involved.
That's a good point.
So that's how situations like this happen.
Yeah.
But if you have that familiarity and that trust and that team, then obviously things are going to work out in your favor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just with the movie industry being what it is, there's no time, there's no money to do all that.
There's no money. I know what you mean.
I mean, there's no money.
I know what you mean.
There's no money to slow it down.
I know.
There's millions upon millions to make a movie. When movies, the most basic half-hour movie costs $400 million to make. You know, there is money to go around, but not that kind of money.
I was telling Marianne about that, about the money. She's like, we were talking about serious films not being made. She goes, do you think it's because of the cost? Like, I think you brought up, like, I forgot what film you said cost $45 million.
This was a long time ago.
Yeah, but
He just happens to remember.
but I said
Little Women cost $45 million.
Okay, yeah, I said 45 million is
The
considered.
latest one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's not a lot though. 45 million is considered a medium budget nowadays. 45 million in the 90s got you Dick Tracy. You know, with Warren Beatty. And that was like all over the Hollywood trades. $50 million for Dick Tracy. Oh my gosh.
See, I loved Little Women, or we liked Little Women, and
I liked it a lot.
And that was a movie that did not make waves.
No.
But then we see
shame.
there are other films that we watch, like Hotel Artemis, that also didn't make waves.
Right.
Thought it was a really good film.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then we see some other like mainstream movies, like for me, Raya, like a big budget CG children's movie, the most cliche, generic, boring trash possible, and it's like a huge hit everywhere.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why though? It does nothing to push the boundary. I guess if you're like a young kid that has never experienced a story like that, sure, it's going to be good. But for anyone else who's seen even basic movies before, I feel like you would be bored. Unless all you want is like a movie to shovel popcorn in your face hole.
Right.
You know?
You
I
are
just
not
like
the target
female lead
audience.
films.
I was not I guess I wasn't, I was too intellectual for that movie, I guess.
I just like that it was a female lead.
Okay, a female lead that was supposed to be LGBT, but then they're like,
I
not
didn't
too
even know
much.
that. I didn't
Oh, they were
realize that.
hardcore pushing lesbian vibes.
I don't remember that. I must not have
Between
paid
her and the other girl, I don't know.
I don't remember that. Okay, well.
Disney,
I
make
didn't-
it more
okay.
gay.
Make more
To be
gay.
fair, I didn't really read about the movie before it came out. I just watched it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, there's a movie out. I'm going to see it.
I'm gonna watch it, alright.
So I gotta get the 3 movies in. So
So I guess in conclusion,
In conclusion,
I'm just gonna hold that.
We'll give Kyle the final word.
oh god,
The special
I have
guest.
to do this on the
Mr.
spot.
Devaney.
Well, you just said in conclusion.
I guess like in conclusion, like
You don't have to.
In conclusion, everyone
Hollywood
sucks.
loves to do gratuitous things for different reasons, and what matters is it framed within the context of the plot, and that's ultimately what matters. Like, yes, what the audience will get out of it, sure, that does matter, but is it framed within context?
Right.
And you know, like you telling me about the ending scene in Last Tango in Paris, you telling me that she kills the dude in the end, that to me feels like, okay, it brings it full circle, it gives a justification, it makes sense, thematically. But not knowing that information, I was like, yeah, it really seems like they just did it just because. So as long as it has context and purpose, I guess.
Yeah.
Some movies, not so much. Some movies, yes.
Yeah. I'll do a little wrap up here. So, this is the end of another fun-filled episode of Fireside Cinema Family. We're family. It's all about family.
All about family.
All about family.
I'm Dog to run.
I'm Brian,
I'm Kitty.
Marianne.
And Kyle.
and on behalf of Dan, Sam, and Aaron,
See you later.
see you later,
That's all, folks.
alligator.